Hi, I'm Stephen Lewis. When I'm not talking on the radio and playing music, I am on the internet talking about sports, movies, and other forms of entertainment. You can't go to the theaters right now without seeing a comic book. The comic book movie business is booming, led the way, of course, by the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And as much success as they're having, a lot of that wouldn't have been the case had a movie not come out 30 years ago this past week. 1989 was the year that the first Batman with Michael Keaton, Jack Nicholson, and directed by Tim Burton hit theaters. And it was a monster. It, to this day, still holds a lot of favor among comic book fans. It's definitely a different take on Batman. Most people at that point in time were used to the quirky Adam West comedic version of Batman. And when it came to Burton, he wanted to take it back to the dark, psychotic roots of the character, and it was a gamble for Warner Brothers at the time. It was a gamble for a lot of people because 10 years they'd been trying to get a Batman movie off the ground. It never happened. There are a lot of people that the role was supposed to go to, one of which was Ray Liotta from Goodfellas. He turned it down, and even to this day, kind of says he regrets turning down the role of Batman. They also wanted Mel Gibson to play Batman. Yeah, that Mel Gibson, but he was busy filming Lethal Weapon 2 and couldn't do it, so they cast Michael Keaton, which led to nothing but backlash. Now, however, you look back and a lot of people say Michael Keaton may have been one of the best Batmans. I still think his Batman is great, but Christian Bale, for me, wins the Bruce Wayne battle until Ben Affleck. I'm an Affleck guy, as much as a lot of people didn't like that. But back in 1989, it was a pretty big gamble that paid off. The suit was hard to maneuver in. It was black. It was rubber. But people loved seeing Batman on the big screen. And for that matter, Jack Nicholson's versions of the Joker is one that still holds up today. A lot of people are kind of more familiar with Heath Ledger if you're the younger side of things. But that version of the Joker that Jack Nicholson played was pretty impressive. Actually, the whole movie was impressive considering it had a modest budget and was shot in 3 months, which is unheard of. Nowadays, you take 6 months to shoot something like Avengers Endgame, in some cases, even a year or more. But it really did change the landscape of movie pictures. It was a different kind of action picture at the time. It made Batman a household name. And it really just had this cool vibe. They definitely took some liberties with the character, one of which being that this version of Batman created the Joker. That wasn't necessarily the case in the comic book. A lot of people you never know who the Joker really is. They gave him a name, they gave him an origin story, and while it's not based in comic fact, it does work pretty well for the movie. They also went through a lot of difficulty trying to figure out the story. Originally, they were going to include Robin in the movie, and we were going to meet a young Dick Grayson, who by the end of the movie would have donned the classic Robin costume, but they decided that that wasn't going to work for this movie. They wanted Batman to be a solo act, so they cast him in an all-black rubber suit, which was really hard to move in, really uncomfortable to wear, but it created what has now been called the hero turn. The cowl was so big, they had to cut the ears down a little bit and redesign it, first of all, because he couldn't fit in the Batmobile. And then second of all, it was impossible because of the thickness of the rubber for Michael Keaton to turn his head. So whenever he turned his entire body, which eventually became dubbed the hero turn. It also gave us a really cool take on Gotham City, Batman's crime-filled home. It's kind of tech noir version where they had modern technology, but everything still had a classic look to it, which would later go on and carry over into different takes on the character. The other thing that came out of this movie was music. Prince did the soundtrack, which originally they tried to get Michael Jackson to do it, but Michael was unavailable. So it went to Prince, who did this kind of really trippy take on things, like from Bat Dance to Party Man to Arms of Orion. It's kind of a cool movie soundtrack. Not a diehard Prince fan's favorite soundtrack, but for whatever reason, it just kind of worked. Prince blaring out of the ghetto blaster, if you will, that Joker goes through the museum with, just kind of fits. You almost couldn't see any other song coming from that. But the biggest song to come from this movie was Danny Elfman. He did the score, which led us to the Batman theme that most of us still know today. It was used with Batman the Animated Series, which was really inspired by this movie. And it's still, even in Justice League a couple of years ago, Elfman works that theme back into things. It kind of became Batman's signature thing, where the 60s had the na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na Batman. Now we have the modern take of the dun-dun-dun-dun, and it just kind of works for whatever reason. If you haven't seen the movie yet, definitely worth checking out. The Nolan trilogy, or I should say the Batman Begins and Dark Knight are good. Piss on Dark Knight Rises, that wasn't worth anybody's time. But I did like Nolan's take on Batman. He kind of grounded it and made it more realistic. But all of that started with Tim Burton. So when you go into theaters and you check out Spider-Man Far From Home coming up, or you check out the re-release of The Avengers, know that all of the comic book movie boom, all the money that they're making, can all thank Michael Keaton and Tim Burton for their take on Batman from way back in 1989. There you go. Brief history lesson. If you haven't seen it yet, it's real easy to get a hold of. Hell, email me. I'll send you a copy.